Live.
We
No,
are
now it's
live
live.
for reals.
Woo! What's up, everybody? Thanks for dropping in. Oh man,
Thanks for dropping in.
we've had Faiz and Ivy here for a minute, and looks like In Just Cuz, Lost Soul, No Mark, Angelica, Daisy. Thanks for all dropping by. How are you doing today, Kristen?
Good. I think
Good?
I was very inspired by you in terms of outfits, and so I'm starting to amass these. Oh man! So as people are streaming in, I'll tell you my couture misadventures as a woman. See, here's the thing: like I was like, oh, haha, funny Hawaiian shirts, right? I can get into that. I can be that Hawaiian shirt person. But like, okay, as a woman, like there are not that many funny Hawaiian shirts. There's a lot of these like floral pattern ones. But then I was like, oh, but I want the one with the Sasquatch hugging a mushroom, and those are only men's shirts. And even this is like technically a men's shirt. And then like, you know, it's kind of boxy. If you really want to wear as a woman, you kind of tailor in the waist.
I think it's that way because the men who buy Hawaiian shirts are typically box shaped. the real Palmer Lucky shaped individuals.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I feel like I really have fun patterns. I'm like, look at this. This is ridiculous.
I mean, loud, fun, ugly, you know, different words, same thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. Yes, and I'm in a very good mood. I'm bouncing. I'm trying to be lively. This is actually really important for those who are watching the recording later.
Yeah,
like
for real.
You've noticed that like algorithmically, this is why streamers do like blah and blah in the beginning, because that's how long we have to get people to click. Yeah, so we have to be very high energy in the beginning.
And that's also like the YouTube accent source too. Like people associate it with watching stuff on YouTube. And even if it can be like cringe at times, it is the thing that people are like habituated to paying attention to.
Exactly. And yeah, if you're watching us from Twitch, from LinkedIn, from Twitter, the party is on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/@OKBangerShow, that's where we have quite a few folks joining us right now.
Every Tuesday at 11 Eastern time and every Thursday at probably 10 p.m. Eastern time. We'll figure it out though.
Yeah.
Kristen.
Yes.
Did you do any reflecting this week?
Oh, right.
That's the show. That's the theme. Today is reflect, period.
Right. Yeah, I did. So thanks to everyone for answering my questions about reflecting. And I don't know whether you guys all saw the thread about it. Like, it turns out every one of you are really reflective people.
Which is cool.
Which is really cool. So I did get a chance to reflect on your responses and also to reflect on my process of reflecting. And I think Lauren, Lamb Photography, made a joke that, oh yeah, we're reflecting so hard that we're just shining into everybody's eyeballs. So yeah, definitely. I was actually kind of surprised, to be honest, Cameron, when you had suggested this theme. I was like, oh, I don't know. It seems kind of like serious, and like it's kind of hard to make a lively show about it because it's so like contemplative. So what were your thoughts?
So I mean, I agree because like we haven't like been avoiding, but we've been picking topics that like are closer to what we've been doing, which is like focusing on high energy, making the show more interesting and better. But like, I like, if we really think about it, like we've been doing a lot of reflecting, and I don't think any of it's been really that boring. It's been like pragmatic. It's not been like us walking in the woods for 1,000 years like a monk. It's been like, although that's like depending on your sensibilities, that's fun to do. It's been like, hey, we come together as a team that's trying to make this thing better and like actively reflecting as opposed to like passively letting the reflection flow through us, which like isn't what I used to think reflecting was, but I think is maybe like an under talked about version of it.
So you had mentioned that I'm going to punch you in the face, and I replied, I'll give you a knuckle sandwich. So I was wondering, did you reflect? Like, what the heck are you doing?
I did reflect, and actually, let's get into this after the bangers. Let's go into that and then use that to kick off the other conversation, because I think people will want to talk about it more. And so we got some good bangers about reflection. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to do those and then we can talk about that, because I do think it'll be spicy.
Yeah. Thank you for picking the bangers this week.
Awesome. And then as I get this up, let's
Say hi to
say hi to,
everybody.
so we got Free Trades and Kaido and Huggle Monster and a whole bunch of other folks dropping in, and we appreciate you.
Yeah. Hi, Mia. Hi, Idabel. Idabel? Huggle Monster, Kaido, Free Trades, Chi Lilybell, Lost Soul, Law. Very nice to see you.
Yeah,
Angelica, thank you for being such a supportive friend.
Thank all y'all. And Fola, thanks for dropping in. All right. And Mia, yes, I do like bright colored outfits. I also like dark colored outfits. I just like not having to be the same thing every day, I think. Okay. So our first banger, Kristen, this is from our I would say like decent friend. I'm not going to say dear friend because I'm not a liar because I don't really know Greg that well. But I'm kind of a liar sometimes. But his cast today is suit and tux are basically the same. Already controversial. I don't understand why there needs to be two different flavors of the same thing. Aside from the fact that we have different flavors of ice cream, what is your take on this?
I actually forgot that you're trying to relate the themes to reflecting. So I thought this was just a funny haha.
It is a funny haha, but it's also like there's another layer deeper to it that I think is interesting.
See, I feel like I don't know Greg enough to know whether he's kind of like a Les Grace type who's like actually super into couture and outfits or something. So I couldn't tell what was ironic. But yeah, I feel like that to me is that the meta joke?
I don't know if there's a meta joke. I think Greg's just being honest here. He's an early 20s, like very smart developer guy. I think this is an honest early 20s dude lamentation of like, oh, I have to buy 2 expensive clothing items.
Oh, it's probably dragged off to a wedding for the first time.
That's my take. Like, I think this is your response when you have to go to like a wedding as an adult for the first time or like earlier time. And I get it. It feels duplicative, but like, I don't know about you, but I've come to appreciate through reflection ceremony more than I did when I was younger. Because so much of your life just isn't marked by like some sort of indicator of importance that like, and like as you start constructing a value system for your life, you have to like decide what's important to you. And some of the ways that we do that is through like clothing or ceremony or things like that. Like we talked about in the ritual episode. So like for me, I don't agree with it, but I like empathize with the take because this was me, circa 10 years ago.
Right. Oh yeah, this reminds me of how I think there's quite a number of mainstream articles about how there's no longer a rite of passage into adulthood. So therefore, when I like our millennial age, like, or you're like on the border of that, like unless you like having children is actually become the rite of passage. And we are kind of like in this weird, like young adult phase forever. And it's a very interesting place to be, don't you think?
I mean, so I hadn't thought about that before, but I think that there is something kind of jarring about your mark from childhood to adulthood being the fact that you have kids now, because my gut would be that you'd want to figure that out beforehand, but I fully understand why that feels like the barrier. And you do have like a 9-ish month, probably longer for a lot of people, if we're being honest about fertility stuff. Like you have a period of time to go through that adjustment. But dude, I feel like you'd want to figure it out earlier, but I also understand the wanting to extend being a kid, because it's just like, and it's not as clean as that, of course, but like it's nice. There's no rite of passage to adulthood because of rising housing costs. Yeah, I get that. I think that that's not entirely wrong. All right, I'm going to jump to this next banger here. This one's a visual one. It's Dan Romero, founder of Farcaster, just saying, "Oh hell yeah!" And it's a picture of a patent. This is or maybe like a patent application of a dock for your smartphone in your keyboard of your laptop.
I think it's really clever, and it really shows that you know what you're talking about, because you corrected yourself. You said it could be a patent application. And I think a lot of people don't realize that just because you file a patent doesn't mean you get it. And you can have all these like fancy technical looking diagrams, but you may not get the patent at all.
Don't get intimidated by somebody that tells you that they filed a patent for the idea that you're working on, because they might be bullshitting you. Would you buy this?
Well, I saw that and I thought, wow, that's not really practical because, like, as you know, like if you have an iPhone that's that, like at least the current size iPhone, it's pretty damn heavy. So this would
True.
be actually a very uncomfortable laptop to use. Um, Good concept. But I
Yeah.
understand that my understanding of Apple patents is that they have like tons of really wacky stuff, but like they don't necessarily execute on them.
I think Amazon is the same way. From my like brief time at Amazon, I saw a lot of people with like they give out puzzle pieces when you have a patent get accepted.
Mhm.
I think this is one of those things. So we have a saying in the military that like it's kind of a backhanded saying where if an idea briefs well,
Mhm.
it's usually implied that it's not a good idea. So like if somebody comes up with something and someone's just like, "Oh, yeah, that briefs really well." That means you explaining it to somebody like in
Mhm.
charge of you is going to be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah, yeah." But in reality, it's probably dumb as fuck. And so I think this briefs really, really well, but the
Mhm.
reality of it means like you're locked into a phone or at least the phone size. It's like this
Mhm.
whole ecosystem problem of like if that size of that hole can't change, then like you're kind of out of luck. And also, it's not obvious what the phone is going to do in that spot. But at first glance, it looks really, really slick.
Yeah. So do you think people usually can get like bonus points or be treated as a banger if they just post a cool pattern of something? I feel like
Y-
yes,
on-
like it's statistically really good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole channel on Farcaster just called diagrams or schematics or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, and then a couple channels I would say that have that same flavor.
Mhm.
Uh, there's a schematics channel. There is a retro futurism channel, which is mostly like pictures of old factory control panels and things like that.
Mhm.
Or excuse me, that might be cassette futurism. Anyway, there's like, and then there's like an old technology channel as well.
Tech
Like,
archive or something?
yeah,
Is it
Tech Archive. That's
nice?
it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and so like those types of things tend to do really well on Farcaster, and that's why they're bangers because it's like really good content audience fit.
Right, right. And do you think these like we talk about Farcaster, but I know many of folks here on Twitter and other platforms as well, and even LinkedIn. Like, do you
Mhm.
think the same thing works across other platforms?
I think it depends on like your pre-existing audience. I mean, like obviously, if you get a little bit of luck, you can get the algorithmic distribution to like get to the part of Twitter or whatever that you're trying to reach. It's probably harder than it's ever been to like break through the algorithmic noise on a lot of these places, especially in a way that's like valuable to you as a creator. Like we
Mhm.
obviously talk about this a lot, but if platforms are just selectively trying to showcase like the best individual pieces of content to people on that platform,
Mhm.
you have the possibility of, getting like a million views on something like, maybe more than you did 5 years ago. But
Mhm.
the conversion rate of people seeing that thing and you capturing or getting any sort of like enduring benefit from it, like in terms of like follows or people that like authentically engage with your stuff, like
Mhm.
that's gone down in the past like 5 years,
Right,
and
right.
at least on the big platforms. And so like that's really tough because like yes, I do think there's a chance that this kind of stuff can pop on these other platforms. It's much more likely if you already are an account that's like known for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like if you or I just posted this on a different platform, like I don't think it would get any traction. Um, but even if it does, I don't even know if it's like good for you. And that's not like dogging these other platforms. It's just like the nature of algorithmic distribution today.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems like chat is generally like agreeing and also wondering is that for charging it? Is it using as trackpad? Extremely confusing. And Ivy, I think my understanding is that they just like bag it in case it is useful, right? And then also it prevents competitors from having some similar idea.
Also, chat, can you let me know if my internet's bad or Kristen's internet's bad? I can't really quite tell, but Kristen, you sounded like a robot to me just now, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
All right, still on there, but I'm gonna jump into this next one here. All right, so this is a meme that I actually stole from Twitter. I'll find the account, but there's like I think the Fourth Way might be the name of the Twitter account, but like I get a lot of like spiritual adjacent memes from accounts like that, and it's Mr. Smith from The Matrix, or Agent Smith from The Matrix, saying, "Why, Mr. Anderson? Why do you persist?" And it's old good old Neo, old Keanu Reeves, saying, "Because I choose to." And that hit pretty hard today. Like I didn't really expect it to hit that hard. Why do you think people resonated with this one, Kristen?
I saw Curious Hermit's reply about Gnosticism and how which I think is super interesting because I only like learned about Gnosticism from watching Esoterica or something like not too long back.
Yeah.
And like because of course like when this first came out, I thought, oh, this is like a Buddhist movie. And I feel like
Yeah.
the funny thing is that The Matrix is such a mirror because like what you think the movie is about is a complete reflection of who you are as a person, right? So I thought it was a Buddhist movie, you know, it's about like, you know, not to be trapped in samsara, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, like the directors have like a much more, you know, they're like, no, it's about the trans experience. And like, you know, the rest of the people are like, it's about red pills and like, you know, like, and all sorts of terrible things. So I feel like it just like really, it's like like almost like a diagnostic as to what your mind state is about.
You might say that it reflects back to you what you're thinking about at this current moment.
Yeah, it's quite a Rorschach test, I think.
For me, the first time that I watched it, I was very much in the, I would say, like a base layer interpretation of like, yeah, screw cubicles and modern work, and like let's break out of it. And like that's not necessarily like a bad take from it, but I didn't look that deep into it. But as I've been forced to age by nature, yeah, I've come to like think about the movie a little bit more, and kind of in the context of the kind of like aesthetic source material, Ghost in the Shell. And then obviously like the follow-on work that they did with the franchise. And it's really interesting to have something that's like a piece of media that's so well made, right? From like the visuals to the sound design to the story, all these like things conceptually, and still like not have a clean answer of like why. And to me, that's honestly kind of like a comment on the nature of reflecting about things, where it's not really like you want to have outcomes from it, but you don't necessarily ever get all of the satisfaction that you'd like to from something, or at least like the nice bow at the end, if you know what I mean.
So what happened today that made you go, this is what I'm gonna cast?
I've had kind of like a theme, like not last week, but the week before, I was kind of like in like a dip. And so like I have a kind of volatile, we'll say like energies. Like I'm a pretty dramatic kid. Like actually, there's some Cameron lore. Kristen, can you guess what my nickname was when I played tennis as like an elementary school kid?
I feel like I don't know tennis well enough because I'm just like, who's in tennis? Federer?
It is not associated with tennis at all. I'll give you a hint. It's a video game nickname.
Video game nickname.
For a dramatic kid.
A dramatic kid. Oh gosh, I need help. I have no idea what he's referencing.
I'd be shocked if somebody got it. But so, did you ever play Star Fox 64?
No, I play Smash.
So there's a character in Star Fox 64 that gets shot down early on, and it's a frog, and it's a frog named Slippy. And cannot like famously Slippy shouts no as like they're crashing, and it's like all caps text. And like as a kid, when I would like lose points, I would like lose points in tennis, like as one does. And more often than not, I'd be like pretty dramatic about it. And part of it was like an emotional regulation thing. Part of it was like the attention as a kid of like hamming it up when, you know, like, oh, things aren't going my way. How do I make it go my way? And that's by like getting attention for it. And so I was Slippy for a little while. I've since restrained some of those. But so that like whipsawing of emotion is kind of like the way that I deal with that sometimes is reminding myself why I'm doing things. And a lot of the reason of like why I do things is because I'm like proactively choosing to do it. Like it's really important to me to like be deliberate about where I'm going. So that's where like this comes in of like, hey, why am I doing this hard thing that I don't really want to spend a bunch of time like debugging code or whatever? It's like, well, because I'm choosing to, because it's like in pursuit of these other things that I'm doing.
Right. This reminds me of we mentioned a few episodes back, like Sisyphus. You have to believe that you want to roll the boulder up.
Yeah.
In order to bear.
Or you know, collapse into a puddle of existential dread. You know, that's just.
And Lauren asked Cameron, where to establish an elder email. Where are those pics? So the pics will be released once we get 10,000 YouTube subscribers. So if you're here right now, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Turning into YouTubers. And the reason why is because like algorithmically, it really helps us be picked up beyond like friends like you that we already know. Like that's our biggest like bottleneck as a creator is like we're trying to reach like strangers, and in order to do that, YouTube has to have proof that people are here.
Yeah. And then I read a little post the other day, you know, like you can't really listen to platforms when they tell you how algorithms work. Like you can directionally, but specifically, like one, these algorithms are so big that nobody actually knows like how it all works anymore. But two, like the platforms are probably prioritizing a type of content or some sort of big picture measure. But the head of platform at YouTube, I think it was like, hey, we are now entirely focused on viewer satisfaction as the most important metric.
Yeah. Are you satisfied? Please be satisfied.
Yeah. And the way that the algorithm understands satisfaction is typically watch time, repeated watch time, sharing links is a big one. So like if you are enjoying these, please just share them. Like not trying to shill super hard, but like honestly, if you're getting value from this, like your friend probably will too.
Yes, thank you. And I see that like some of you have invited your friends already to this chat, so thank you so much.
Yeah, like holy crap, we got 76 concurrent. I think that's a all-time 77. That's a
right. Okay,
record.
so while you switch to the next banger, so StreamYard shows us like viewer numbers across all the platforms of streaming. So we also get an ego boost, though we have no idea who you are if you're on the other platforms. So join us on YouTube.
Yeah, drop us drop replies everywhere. We're actually okay. We'll talk about this another time. But I'm really excited for the concept of helping creators build lists on Seymour, Kristen. That was the thing that I wanted to talk about earlier, but we'll talk about that after this. Okay, so here's the next banger from Tim Riley, TLDR. The Mona Lisa. I've changed my mind. It is worth seeing IRL, which is contentious. He used to think otherwise. He'd been disappointed fighting the crowds on his first trip to Paris. It was small and far away, but most of all, he felt he'd already seen it. But today, I was impressed by a few elements that I've never been able to notice within infinite copies. Coloration. There's a mysterious blue hue to the sky that makes the terracotta landscape deeply dark yet warm, like wet clay. Great imagery from Tim right there. Scale, I actually find the compactness of it very charming now. You can take in the whole composition in a natural way. Also learning that Da Vinci traveled with this for 15 years, continually refinishing it, gave the size of it new meaning. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. It's like a tablet with one app.
That's a banger.
Presence. Cultural memes are particularly hard to see with clear eyes. Being physically with a great work helps you clean your mind of sedimentation from derivative impressions and look at it as an original again. Recommend it.
Oh, that is a great sentence. I did not read that. Wow.
Yeah, this is a good write-up by Tim. We're if you're just tuning in, Kristen and I are writers, and we're honestly like pretty big fans of like good writing. So kudos to Tim for that. It's a banger just from the composition of it alone. But I think it's a banger for me in this show because it's a banger that is the direct result of reflection. And like, it's a banger that you can't write the first time that you see it, because I think the impact of it comes from thinking one thing, taking some time to sit with it, and then saying the thing that your mind changed to. Like, that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Mona Lisa?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I paused for a second. I've never been to France, so I'm not sure. I think my mind went to the Da Vinci Code or something
Yeah.
like movies with the Mona Lisa featured.
The Lauren says that she felt the same way about the statue of David. You can see the very human muscle dimples in his thighs from his fingers pressing on it. It's mind blowing. Fully agree. Marble sculpture to me is like one of the most impressive forms of human achievement because like good marble sculpture, obviously,
Right,
because
right.
you can make garbage. Like the same thing with there's a
I know even
statue.
garbage marble sculptures are really impressive to me, but
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Like the one when especially when they can do like cloth and really soft materials appear in marble, I think that's super impressive.
Yeah. There's a oh, hey, look, we got an X comment. Asus, thanks for dropping in. And yes, we would love if y'all would sponsor us to send us to Paris. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
There's another marble sculpture in the Vatican, or at least it was when I visited it as a kid, and it's like the Virgin Mary holding baby Jesus, and like it's so hard to like describe this in words,
Mm-hmm.
but he made these rocks look like they loved each other, which is
Mm-hmm.
nuts. It's absolutely crazy. Like I'm incredibly impressed by like artistry in like various different fields, but like sculpture for me, every time I see it, I'm just like, dude, what the heck? How'd you do that? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I think maybe we should talk about art as a
Ooh,
practice and appreciation in one of our later episodes.
that's intimidating, but yeah, I agree.
Because I'm just seeing so many great comments from the chat right now. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we can go on all day.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like Arjun weighed in. Yeah. I think the important part of it is indeed the reflection about how your interpretation of an artwork can change as you change.
Right.
Unsurprisingly well spoken from Arjun, our resident Farcaster poetry guy. That was how him and I met. We were talking about the concept of being a poetry guy on Farcaster.
Right. Yeah. And we also have Trisel. I saw the Statue of David when I was 17. So my 17-year-old self was like, Beavis and Butthead voice. So I think it's also fun to reflect on our childhood and what we thought versus what we think now.
Yeah, man, we got so many good topics to get to. Good thing that we do 2 shows a week.
Yeah.
All right, let's get this last one going.
Mhm.
It is so it's from Kagusha, and it's a classic like Happy Sunday GM, like that kind of single word post with a picture of spirituality parentheses beginner, has a bunch of tarot cards, crystals, star signs, chakra stuff, and then on the right hand side it's spirituality advanced, which is coffee and a cigarette. What's your take on this, Kristen?
It's a classic. It's a classic. I think there's no beginning nor end to spirituality in its circle. So I was like, oh yeah, I totally get that. I think for me, I have fluctuated between these two phases too. Not the cigarettes, but the coffee for sure.
So I had a little audio chat with the Terminator Kristen. That's what I'm calling the robot voice. But what I think I got out of that comment was you flip back and forth kind of between these two in terms of like your personal practices of figuring out spirituality. Is that accurate?
Yes. And also it's just you, like the chat thinks that we both sound great. So
it turns out that the only person that is like screwing up this podcast is me today, which is fine. Unsurprising. Do you sit with one more than the other, or is it like an even split?
Oh, I mean, obviously I'm on the left. Hello.
You don't want to say you're advanced?
As crystals and stones, I'm not really tuned into that as much, but definitely the rest of the stuff, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Tuned in is a cool way to say that if you like dig into it, with like frequencies and shit like that. But I don't think I'm either of these. Like I drink, well, let me put it this way. I drink a lot more coffee than I do hold crystals, but like I'm not going to poo poo anybody's practice, because like I don't know anything. I don't claim to know anything. I'm just like doing my best, I have kind of like opinions about what I think about the world, and I have like models that I keep in my head of like, okay, this is like how I'm going to make decisions. Crystals and tarot readings and things like that, like, don't really enter into it.
Mhm.
But I will say that like more often than not, I like accidentally identify with like, Leo classifications, like unexpectedly. But obviously there's like a lot of writing tricks that you can do to make that stuff like fit a little bit more than maybe
Ooh,
it
yeah.
actually does.
Astrology people, could you tell that Cameron's a Leo? Will we disclose? And can you tell what I am? This is
Ooh,
a
yeah, that's
this is a really
interesting.
good trick.
Yeah. And then Sam is telling me not to put myself down. I
Oh,
appreciate that, Sam.
I
The
feel like Sam's really good at monitoring. Like they're like always like, nope, 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 no putting yourself down ever. Which I think is a really interesting thing because I wonder, is it good to catch yourself before you say it?
I think it's good. I think it's good to a degree. And that Sam's like, of course I'm a Leo. So Kristen, I think it's good to the same degree about my hot take about reflecting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my I'm gonna pop this down. My hot take about reflecting is that some people need to reflect less. And if
What?
you and if you heard me say you need to reflect less and we're like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're right, you're not one of the people that needs to reflect less. You're one of the people that needs to reflect more. If you heard me say that and went, what? I think there's a chance you need to reflect a little less in your life.
Okay, fine. That's pretty clever.
All right. So
I see where you're getting
I've
at.
been cooking that one. And so,
Yeah. Okay,
like,
so this relates to how, like, when I was young, and in fact, I would say even very recently, if you know me, I used to think, oh, reflecting means you criticize yourself,
mm,
right? It's like, okay, if I'm going to reflect, I'm going to figure out everything that I did wrong, so I'll never do that wrong thing again, and
ooh,
therefore
that's
I'll
scary
eventually do all the right things.
and impossible.
Exactly. And it took me like many, many trials and tribulations and continuous drilling to my head by people like Sam even to be like, oh no, like it works a lot better if you
No.
figure out your strengths and then like you try to make more of that happen because trying to bug fix yourself a million different ways is not gonna make you a better MVP. Like you gotta
Yeah.
figure out what's taking off.
Yeah. What's the core loop? Like, what is the thing that like matters the most with it? Because you're always going to be able to like tweak and shift and like everything that you ship out, like either emotionally or physically in the world, is gonna have stuff wrong with it when you do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, dude, that's so tough. How did you transition from, we'll call it attention to detail until you die, Kristen, to maybe a more healthier version of you?
When I realized the opportunity cost.
Mm,
So, and I'm seeing actually in the chat, there's a lot of debate as to whether this is true or not, like whether you should
yeah.
criticize yourself or not. Um, it's like I think like once, okay, let's just say we next time any of you, like including myself, criticize yourself, feel how it feels in your body, and like for me, it's like an immediate sense of tension and contraction and like
Mm,
unhappiness. And so, like, in a way, if back to the optimization for happiness thing, if I'm trying to optimize to be happy and to be a peaceful person, then I'm literally unoptimizing that and trying to fix the real world problem. So that's why I'm like, oh, like that's the easiest way to explain it. That's really secular. Is like
yeah.
if you're causing tension in your soma, which I think is like a trick, like a sneaky way
Yeah.
spiritual people are sneaking energies and stuff into it. Is we say
Uh,
somatic state, which is actually spiritual stuff, then that's how you can tell that maybe this method of optimization can use some work. But it's also not very effective, to be honest.
so when I have negative self-talk, it like two outcomes happen. And I would classify one as useful and one as not useful.
Mhm.
And not because I don't want to like classify it as good or bad, because it's like I think most of our emotional states have a purpose of some kind. And so like classifying one as like bad, I think is too reductive. Also, I want to acknowledge Daisy here in the chat, who I think has identified me, or has me pegged. I definitely thought up my little turn of phrase with reflecting for so long, and thought of how cool it'll be when I say it. I do that all the time. I like the craft of coming up with clever turns of phrase, because like as a kid, like I'm just be honest, like I read so much that like it was one of the primary activities as a kid. And so like reading, Terry Bradshaw or whatever, and like finding a little description of like a sword or something, like that stuff just really gets me going. But on the emotional side, I either get depressed, which is like kind of like my path on the way to inaction. So like, hey, you screwed this up, you suck, you're bad at this. And then I sink, and I'm just like a lot of what's the point energy comes from that kind of response.
You mentioned that in the chat too.
The other one though is I get pissed, and not like pissed I'm gonna like punch the wall pissed, but like get your act together pissed. And I think like that's a thing that is probably over glorified on, let's say, like the male side of motivational internet, but also really, really useful in certain contexts. Because
I've reflected more on that, because I remember we had a debate about the masculine versus feminine attitude. And
what episode was that?
Like, to be honest, I don't remember. However, I want to show my media kit.
Yeah, please. Sorry for interrupting.
Where there exists a page. I don't know whether we fixed the direct link yet, but
I did.
I have I think okbanger.com now links to a page that shows you the link to each episode, and we have some AI generated summaries of each episode of key points that are not often seen in other podcasts of same category. So I've asked AI to pull out unique points. So we can find it out there where we mentioned this. But to your point, if we're thinking of like depression and anxiety as like somatic states of like actual like depression and like and like feeling down, I can see how like anger is a tool that can like wake you up from that depressive state. So that's where I'm like, oh, I think I want to correct what I said. I now see your perspective.
I appreciate that. My canonical example for this, I don't know if this comes across your algo feeds at all, but so I have a bunch of random stuff, especially in my like TikTok feed, but it'll be like, brain rot, cat, cute cat, lifter guy. And then it'll get into some sort of like weird, whatever, like a TikTok of a potato or something. And then there'll be a David Goggins thing, but it's not like David Goggins. It's like a super cut.
Oh,
it'll just cut
like a fan cam of David Goggins.
It's more jarring than that. It's something that like I'll just be like, oh, cute cat, you're a bitch. And then it'll be David Goggins' face. And
I love it.
It's good because like I don't watch the full thing, but like the one, like I always make sure to like those. Yeah. And it like breaks my algorithmic hypnotism. And I'm like, oh, is this how I want to be spending my time right now? And the answer usually is like, no. And so like, the like continuation of it or sitting in it for me isn't helpful, but like the instant of it is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
which is
that's it, right? Like, I see that a lot of folks in my question had answered, oh, I reflect at the end of the day or something like that, which I think we should dedicate some time to it. And then of course there's also the practice of like how meta-aware and how much reflecting can you do spontaneously without having to plan for it. I know we were just talking about over reflecting, but I feel like if we can do it in a way that's not judgmental, then it's not harmful.
Yeah, I mean, like there's, again, with everything, there's kind of like the healthy and maybe like the not so healthy version of it. Like I think that, so like the unhealthy version of what you're talking about is, I think, intellectualizing everything in your life, right? Because intellectualizing or over intellectualizing stuff, also like warning, I'm not a doctor. Like I'm just a dude, and like Kristen is a neuroscience PhD, so I think she's like more qualified to talk about stuff like this.
Also,
but like
not a medical doctor.
Yes, yeah. And so like take all of this with like a big old chunk of salt. But like
you can believe me as much as you believe Andrew Huberman.
Yeah. Oh damn, that's a subtle flex.
No.
But
Oh,
the but
see,
so like
I have to have some clickbait for this chat.
you got to do it. That's the cost of doing business. But so over intellectualizing stuff, speaking as like a chronic over intellectualizer,
Mm,
is a way of protecting yourself from a thing that might potentially, like in most cases, like bruise your ego,
mhm,
or like cause you to feel something. And if you don't like feeling things, like that's like an injury.
mhm,
And so like holding stuff at arm's length, be it like a partner or like an event in your life, like a, or
mhm,
you know, I hesitate to use the word trauma because that's so loaded now, but like over intellectualizing that to me isn't reflecting on it. It's
mm.
separating yourself from the thing.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes you need to do that.
Right.
For
Oh, you're bringing up a really good point. I think for the longest time, I also thought reflecting is thinking, which I think like
mm,
we have to do it to some extent, right? There is
yeah,
like, for example, after this show, we have our action reflection sort of thing that we
yeah,
do. But when I say reflecting now, I feel like I'm reflecting on the feeling
yeah.
in the body.
So that's the kind of reflecting I think dudes need to do more. So
Mhm,
like back to like the thing that I was saying about reflecting less.
mhm,
Like the kind of person that needs to reflect more is me 10 years ago.
mhm,
It is a person that like feels a thing and just like reacts to it and is just like,
mhm,
no, this reaction is right. When like your reactions being right is a much more complicated topic than just like validating your own sense of what should happen next in any kind of
mhm,
scenario.
mhm,
Um, so like I kind of went through a large chunk of my life being like, if something happens to me and I'm just like, ah, fuck that guy, or like, screw that, or like, you know, like I'm right and like, oh, they're wrong. Like all of those kinds of feelings
mhm.
are really good opportunities for what you're talking about of like maybe removing yourself from a situation for 5 minutes. That's actually like the biggest relationship, I don't know, tip, hack, whatever you want to call it, that I've mostly embraced is like
Mhm.
when I start to notice or my partner starts to notice that like a conversation is turning unproductive, the best thing that I can do, which isn't necessarily always the best thing for her or our like actual situation, but like for me is often go somewhere else for 15 minutes. Don't get on your phone so you can stop pretending, like so you can like pretend and not think about it for a second. But sometimes getting on your phone is like a way to separate yourself and just kind of like sitting with the feeling of like, I'm pissed. Why am I pissed?
Right.
Because that's not a question that I asked myself for most of my life, which is
Yeah,
like,
actually, I want to share a vulnerable story around that
yeah,
because, like,
please.
you know that, like, just a few days ago, I got pissed about something
Yeah.
that happened online, and like, it was a situation where a friend had said something that I thought was like potentially like harmful to other friends online,
Yep.
and then like I got into my chaplain righteous indignation mode.
Lawful good.
Exactly, lawful good, right? The hammer came out. And I said, that's not cool, etc. Um, but then, like the next day, I extended an olive branch. I used my dove emoji, a very useful emoji, by the way. If you ever want to extend
Never
an
used
olive
it once. That's crazy. I'm
branch,
gonna try that.
yeah. And then I said, I feel like, I although I still believe that, you need to make an apology, which the person did,
Yep.
like I feel like my reaction was not optimal because I reacted with the same level of tension like in
Mm.
myself and in like my relationship with you that like was not necessary. And I could have made the same point without getting upset myself. So I didn't like overtly express it. If you check my timeline, you can't tell that I was really that upset, but I was agitated before I went to bed, like the other night. So I think like that's where the reflection piece, especially for those of us who are like obsessed with like reflecting well and
Yep.
like trying to do good, like gets into. It's actually the righteous indignation phase, and like
Yep.
I feel like, especially, for activist types, or for those of us who are trying to protect others, it is very triggering, right? Like, of course, I have my own like childhood history of being bullied, and like that's what gets triggered when I see these situations, and I feel like, no, I must protect this person because no one was there for me when I was a kid. But then, in a way, I'm like reactivating that tension, and like, when I see like people I admire, like Buddhist teachers, etc., who like handle these situations, they can make their point. They can be fierce even, but they're not tense when they do it.
Mm, that's interesting.
Hmm.
The like comment, I mean, like your kind of consistent theme about identifying like the biology that you're like living in that moment
Hmm.
is really interesting. Like I think about that in terms of like monitoring yourself for health, but I haven't really thought about it in terms of like explicit mental health, like real-time updates, which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like you get into righteous indignations too, and I talk
Oh
you
yeah.
down.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you know, I just like want things to be better than they are a lot of the time
Hmm.
because I don't know, like we kind of talked about like my upbringing in the Catholic Church, and then kind of like not really embracing that as my worldview going on, but like I still have like the markers of like there's right and there's wrong. Like I do genuinely think that there are evil people in the world that commit monstrous acts like that. Frankly, a lot of people in the Western world like don't ever have any exposure to like viscerally, so they
Hmm.
don't factor it into their like calculus with interacting with others. But I also, through a lot of trial and error, have figured out that the tense approach, as you point out, like isn't helpful.
Hmm.
If your goal is to win hearts and minds, like a specific example of that from my life is
Is that true though? I wanna challenge that. I feel
yeah.
like people do get riled up because right now, even as we joke for this podcast, it's like people like algorithmically favor really riling up stuff. So
So
that's why we're so divisive as a society because it's literally the machine is pushing us to be divisive because that rewards you with views and engagement and
yeah,
money.
but well, one, I think that's like a different thing. If like, which is why I had the asterisk. Like, if your goal is to win hearts and minds, like the rest of the sentence is to your cause.
Oh.
The I think there's a couple things in there. The first one being that like I don't think algorithms reward divisiveness; they reward engagement. And it just so happens that like anger is one of the things that is most engaging to interact with online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, if some
Yuck.
other emotional state had the
Mhm.
same kind of effect, I think we'd see that come out. But kind of the deeper piece of it is if you truly believe in the thing that you're like you believe,
Mhm.
I don't understand how your ultimate goal isn't bringing other people to your cause. Like that's why certain religions propagate more than others. They're inherently mimetic and like proselytize their like mimetic things.
Mhm.
If you are just trying to rile up the people on your team, I almost always bucket that in the like, oh, they don't actually believe this thing. They
Mhm.
are just serving some sort of like self interest using this thing as a tool to do that.
Mhm.
That's kind of like a Cameron opinion. I don't really have any like basis for that other than like I've interacted with a lot of people that like say that they, you know, are a true believer in XYZ thing. And then you like really get down to it. And like they're the preachers that like, you know, are being inappropriate with like, you know, people in their congregation, or they're the hero of like whatever team that they're on that ends up not
Mhm.
actually living up to the ideals that they're trying to talk about. Not that
Yeah.
I'm a perfect person, but like if you're not trying to win people to your side like earnestly,
Mhm.
I don't really have time for it because I think it is mostly posturing for yourself.
So do you think there are objective values? Because I think like we talk about reflecting, and there's some folks who
Yep.
mention, oh, I reflect against like, these metrics like family and things that I care about, so that I'm reflecting against something, right? Which I think makes sense.
Yep.
So do you believe that? How do you do it?
I don't have an objective moral framework for the universe.
Mm.
I like I've thought about this a good amount. Turns out one of like the benefits of being in the military is that you have long stretches of uninterrupted time with no access to any type of technology. So like we talked
Yeah.
about the Good Place and Jian Yu the monk, and how his like story arc ultimately ends up with him like doing thousands of years of meditation. Like I realized that the other day, not that I'm like meaningfully like enlightened in any kind of way, but I realized I've spent a lot of time just thinking about thinking.
Mm.
just by virtue of the circumstances that I put myself in. And so like I don't think that there's an objective moral framework for the universe, but I do think that you construct the value systems that give your life meaning, or you can construct those. It's harder to do that if you've experienced like meaningful amounts of like disaster and trauma, because like, of course you think the universe is bad when you've experienced a lot of bad things. Like that's a super reasonable thing because that's your lived experience. I've been fortunate enough to have like a good mix of the two to kind of experience a lot of different things about the world. So I have like, you know, maybe like that's where I live. At the same time, I think in order for society to have any kind of stable persistence into the future, there are baseline things that we as people need to like agree on in a social contract with each other. And so like, it kind of ends up being like selectively libertarian pieces of that with some sort of like not infringing on other people's right to like, you know, decide most of the things about their life, with an undercurrent of, hey, there's a baseline level of resource allocation that probably makes sense for society to have so that everybody doesn't like, so everybody's not born into some sort of like miserable hellscape.
Right. And I think like in the Buddhist perspective, one thing that is like a bit nuanced is that there like we often use the word like right action or wrong action or skillful, unskillful, but the actual word is beautiful. Like if you translate the original word. I love that. Yeah. So there's actually a subjectiveness to values of like, you know, what do you consider as beautiful? And so like that's why I use or I've been taught like, you know, the tension in your body is in a way an inference for values that you consciously don't realize, but subconsciously like your body or like the rest of the cells that belong to you are trying to tell you something.
That's and nuts.
It is
like
nuts.
not like in a good way. That's nuts.
By the way, everyone, you all have your own moral compass, and it's completely subjective to your body experience. So I think like that's where like I feel like the moments of reflecting, like for example, in a situation where I got mad and righteous indignation, I'm like, ooh, it is like beautiful in the sense I'm trying to be like, you know, valuing justice in some way, but I kind of negated that by being a little bit ugly myself by being all tense. So like that's the you know, no right and no easy answer sort of like values and reflections that like we humans get to do that I think other like sentient beings on Earth don't get to do.
Well, I might push back on that a little bit because I have 2 cats and I do think that they think about how their actions impact me.
Oh, they do? Oh, tell me more.
Well, okay. So one of them is very explicitly tries to manipulate me into feeding her more. Rue. She knows that I'm the primary feeder in the morning. And what she'll do is if I have my elbow exposed at all, when she decides it's time to wake up, she'll come over and she'll just like nip my elbow, but then she'll immediately jump on my chest and be like, hey, you know, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just hungry. And so like, that's not winning my heart and mind, but it is, I mean, that's not true. It's winning my heart a little bit.
Yes, you're literally talking about this on air. It's so funny.
I also want to add another factor into this for the more, we'll say, skin suit minded. If you want to know what a skin suit is, watch our other episodes. We talked about that. More practical folks, responding with tension very, very rarely, unless you're like explicitly trying to be this like abuser persona where somebody were like is forced to respond to you, which is never a good long-term strategy, but does really work in the short term, which is why abusers do it. If you respond with tension or harshness, most of the time the other person responds with their own tension or harshness, which like immediately shuts down the possibility for like finding a middle ground or compromise or like even like concession to you being right. We had another quick army anecdote there. Like, it's important to like wear your uniform nice in the military. And I went to a military college. It's not the same thing as the military, but there's like elements that cross over. And so a lot of the students at my college weren't going to commission. You didn't have to at my undergrad. And the people that weren't commissioning a lot of the times were like NCAA athletes. And so there are these people that are like really passionate about their sport that just so happened to be playing it at a military college because it was a D1 college and they like wanted to be on that team. It is very, very hard to get, the 6.5 foot tall guy who just wants to like play football to like also buy into the military stuff when like if they had gone to any other college to play sports, they would have been treated like heroes, right? Like the athletes at like a UVA or these like more normal colleges, like they're like people love them around campus. At military college, it's like less of a priority.
Yeah. I went to USC, but like doing the Reggie Bush era. So I know the worshiping.
So like all their friends that are athletes are kind of demigods. And then they go to the school where it's like, yeah, like we're glad that you're doing that, but like, it's not really that important. So like, they don't want to buy into the system. And the kind of like party line of getting these people to do it was to yell at them until they do. And like, as a part of like the student government, like that was part of like my purview and responsibility. It turns out that like, if you reach out to them, show an interest in their sports, you go to their games, everybody on the team, you spend the time to like show them that you respect that the thing that they do too. When they're like wearing their hat the wrong way, you can say like, hey man, like, I know you just came from practice. Like please get your uniform right. Like, that's like the right way to wear it. If you've built that respect, they'll be like, oh yeah, sure. And like, it change like their default behavior sometimes, but like in the moment, it is so much easier to get somebody to do the things that you want to do if they feel like they're a respected part of that interaction. And I think like that's like a big piece of righteous indignation, as you pointed out, that we don't really talk about enough. Like, you're not convincing anybody on the other team that you might have some good points if you're also calling them an animal in the same breath.
Right. Yeah, I have so much respect for like, people who like, willingly make friends with like, certain like extremist groups. And it's just like, it's like so much harder and longer path to like befriend the enemy essentially. But that probably is a more effective strategy.
Yeah. That said, sometimes the other side is a literal Nazi and it's not worth your time to do. So like, you got to have judgment.
Yeah, like I was trying so hard to not mention Nazis on a podcast for the algorithm.
Whatever.
Unfortunately, the internet was a Godwin's law. Happened last minute.
It's tough. None of this is easy. Is there anything that you've been reflecting about that you think is like also important that we haven't talked about?
I think that's also like the frameworks of reflecting, like speaking of the Skinsu practical aspects, right? Yeah. Like in chaplaincy school, we had to write these papers that are called like action reflection, where literally we do something related to chaplaincy and we write a lot about like, how did this make us feel? Like, what are the, ways in which we can improve, etc. And then you and I do the same thing, right? Like you taught me AAR, which I forgot what it stood for. What does it stand for again?
After action review.
Oh, after action review, which is the military way of saying a retrospective.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of these agile terms. And like, we end of every episode after this show, we will talk about what we will sustain, like, what went well, and then we will talk about what we will improve. And then we would triage, because I was like, okay, we had up like 10 bullet items for each one. Yeah. I'm like, there's no way we can track. So like for this episode, we only have one improved that we'll do very, very soon. But like, for what do you think the average person, like what do you think they should do to, make it a lightweight framework,
So, I mean, I think I'm going to go back to like, not to generalize, but like, if you're a dude and it resonates at all with the like, you need to reflect less, stop. Like, take 5 minutes to be like, why am I feeling the way like this thing? You don't have to have an answer. Like the act of asking yourself is like the input to the eventual output of like actually being able to perceive yourself better. The flip side is if you're the person that was shocked that I would even suggest not reflecting, there might be some problems in your life that would be better served with you just punching the wall until it breaks. Like, you don't need to be smarter about that. Like, you're not going to outthink the brick wall in front of you. Like sometimes you just need to punch it into submission. Do you have any reactions to that?
I think, well, first of all, I do want a boxing set, which, we can talk about later. But then I think there is something to what you're saying in that the mindset that got you into the unfavorable situation is not going to get you out of it. So it is better to rest it so that your subconscious mind, your body can give you better answers, essentially. So like, it's like, you are kind of reflecting, but you're not deliberately reflecting in this overbearing way, which over reflectors like us tend to do.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like you're not letting your reflection get in the way of the outcome that you actually want, which is the situation to get better. Because like,
right. It turns into that meme that spiraling me.
Yeah, like because sometimes we like use reflecting as a way of not doing the thing that we need to do.
Yeah. So, okay, let's end this episode and we'll work on our improve, which is me playing the outro song while we read out all your names and thank you for being here.
Sam, Makata, Lauren, thanks for dropping by. We got Saint, Darkris, No Mark. We're fucking screwing with the volume here a little bit. Daisy, Prof, thanks for dropping in. Yeah, definitely dig through Kristen's cast. All right, y'all. Thank y'all. Have a good rest of your day.
Galazio, Lauren, Daisy. Oh my gosh. Miko.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here, Ivy.